love yourself enough to take care of this. But what you mean? You're supposed to exercise if you love yourself. Uh-oh. What kind of walking did you do? What kind of exercise did you do? Did you get on a bicycle? Did you do something physical to keep this physical anatomy in good working condition? You didn't do that. Oh, I'm very busy. I'm too busy. I'm very busy. I'm a doctor. I got a lot of patients, man. I ain't got no time for that. I'm a teacher. I got to study, get my lesson plans out and everything. I ain't got no time for no exercise. Well, you got time to die. Welcome back to another episode of Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines. I'm your host, #OneTime. And on today's show, we're talking about stop focusing so much on the battle and learn the lessons. Learn to love yourself. Welcome back to another episode. It is the audio podcast version of Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines. If this is your first time listening to Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines podcast, do me a favor and type in the comments just a brief comment and say, this is my first time, or this is my first time listening to the show, because I want to welcome you in. I think that the content that exemplifies winning at life behind enemy lines is what people can actually use. But on today's show, on today's audio podcast, we're diving deep into life's hardest and most necessary skills, learning from the battles that we face instead of just going through the battles and concentrating on them all the time. We're talking about DO. DO spells the word do, where the D stands for defense and the O stands for offense. You know, all too often we get stuck in the defensive mode, reacting to life's setbacks, but not really concentrating on the growth that happens when we go through anything. When we take control and learn the lesson and apply it in our lives, apply it to the future, we come out winners on the other side. But we can't concentrate solely on the battle. So today we'll get into the mindset shift that helps us to decide, I want to do better. I want to not just concentrate on the battle, not just go through the battle, but grow through the battle. We'll touch a little bit on two powerful forces that I believe we all need. One is self-love, and the other one, you need self-forgiveness. Shout out to the minister. At the beginning of the podcast, I played a clip that where he talked about self-love. Y'all, without self-love, without forgiving yourself, all we do is wallow in the battle, and we can't stay in the battle. You know, I actually believe that when I hear people say, oh, well, they're doing this or they're doing that because they don't love themselves. If you think about it, you rarely ever hear anyone walk around and talk about, I'm doing this because I don't love myself. I think people display outwardly that they don't love themselves, but no one talks about, I just do not love myself. I think people just really don't know how sometimes when they're caught behind enemy lines, when they're going through a trial. You know, you often hear me say, we all know someone who's made a mistake, does not forgive themselves, and just wallows in the battle, concentrates solely on the battle, and don't forgive themselves. We all know someone who's made a mistake, who's going through a battle or is just now coming out of one. And we say they don't have self love. Self love is not just about treating yourself well, it's about valuing yourself enough to demand from yourself that you improve. Yeah, we've got to make the choice to improve. It's about recognizing that you are worth healing, that you are worth growing and moving forward in your purpose in life. It's about acknowledging your past, yes, but it's also about embracing what's to come, positive in your future, and shaping your future, not holding yourself hostage, not draping yourself in self doubt all the time. There are 3 steps, I believe, that when you love yourself, here's what you do. Number 1, you accept, you take acceptance, you claim, you acknowledge what your flaws are. True love starts with seeing yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror, looking at yourself for who you are, not who others expect for you to be. You've got to have a bit of affirmation. You've got to affirm. You've got to speak life into yourself, replacing negative talk with words of encouragement. You've got to tell yourself, I'm worthy, I'm capable, I'm enough. I can do this. I love myself enough, but I love myself so much I refuse to wallow in the battle. I refuse to stay stagnant in my life. And that requires that you take action, that you invest in yourself, whether it's through self-care, improving your education, improving a relationship that you might have, moving toxic people out of your life, inviting and displaying positive energy in your life, and showing yourself love through the choices that you make. But all that encompasses that we learn the lesson, that we embrace the power of forgiving ourselves. You know, we can't move forward at all if we keep punishing ourselves for the mistakes that we've made and the things that have happened in our life in the past. Forgiving yourself isn't about excusing the mistakes that you make. It's about acknowledging them, learning from them, and deciding that they don't define who you are. You know, one of the greatest stories in the Bible, one of the greatest passages of forgiveness and learning a lesson out of the forgiveness is when God forgives us, it comes with expectations. You know, you might remember the story about the woman in the Bible who was caught committing adultery. They drug her out of the house. They drug her out of the bed, barely with any clothes on, and took her before Jesus. And here's what Jesus did. The lesson, the irony of the lesson of forgiveness. When he stooped down in the dirt, no one knows what he wrote. But here's what he said to her. You are forgiven, but go and sin no more. The lesson was, forgive yourself, but decide not to commit adultery again. Decide not to do this again. In other words, don't make this same mistake again. That's what forgiveness of yourself requires. There's some action steps involved in that. And the same lesson about forgiving yourself are some of the same lessons that we need to learn to embrace about loving ourselves. But when you forgive yourself, you acknowledge that you made a mistake. You own it. You take responsibility without shame. You recognize where you went wrong, but you don't dwell there. You can't stay there concentrating on the battle, concentrating on the mistake that you actually made. You have to extract from that lesson and ask yourself the question, what did this experience teach me? How can I use the knowledge that I learned to make choices in my life that'll move me on in my life? You release. You have to reset. You give yourself permission to move on, but you can't wallow in the mistake that you made and concentrate on it. You let go of the guilt. You adjust your actions and you trust yourself to do greater things in life to come. Your battles are not your identity. They're not our identity, y'all. They're not what defines us, but they are lessons in the journey that we go through in life. But when you shift from defense to offense, from just going through the battle to learning from the battle, you become unstoppable. The lesson is always greater than the loss. The win is always greater than the wounds. If you've enjoyed today's episode, if this episode today hit home for you about forgiving yourself and loving yourself and not wallow in the trials and the things that you go through, that we go through in life, drop a comment. Drop a comment and let me know how you actually forgive yourself, how you actually stop wallowing in the things that you go through in life. Drop me a comment. I want to hear about them. But if you've enjoyed the episode on today, if it applies to you as it applies to me, because we've all made plenty mistakes, and there are going to be plenty more mistakes in life because we're all behind enemy lines. And you know, I always say there are three things that happen behind enemy lines. Number one, there's a choice that we have to make. We're either going to escape, be rescued, or we'll die behind enemy lines. And that's not what we want to do. If you've enjoyed the show today, again, like, subscribe, go to the description of the podcast, and there you will find we're on other social media platforms. You can order Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines merchandise. But y'all remember this. Life isn't just about surviving the battles. It's about winning the war. So stay strong in the battle. You'll win the fight. But love yourself. Forgive yourself in the process. Peace. And we'll see you next time.